Well, thanks for joining, Shray, and thanks for everyone in the audience. My name is Robert Wallace. I am a partner at Tallwave. We're a customer experience design company, and I am honored. And I'm always these brand innovators events are always so great. But every time I log on to do them, the content's always so great. I'm always like, wow, we have to follow up really great content, and that was certainly the case today. So it speaks to how great Brand Innovators is. But welcome, Shray. I thought before we jump into it, and hopefully we'll just have an open conversation about all things innovation and marketing and the experience that you're trying to build for your customers, both in store and digitally, around Health-Ade, and talk about that brand. But why don't you take a few minutes and just talk about yourself and your role before we jump into it?
Perfect. So thank you, Brand Innovators, for hosting me today. Super excited to chat, and continue our conversation from yesterday, Robert. So
Sure.
as everybody can see on the screen, my name is Shray Joshi, head of growth and retention here at Health-Ade. So I manage all of our direct-to-consumer business, have that be through health-ade.com and all of its subsidiaries. From there, I manage all of our brand advertising efforts and some of our own channels. And then lastly, manage our trade and shopper marketing that has to do with all things digital. Um, Background, as Pearl kind of touched on, used to be a nutritional biochemist, so was really focused in health and wellness in the most nerdy way possible, and kind of decided to, be able to take all of that complex information and digest them into, tidbits that people can use on a day-to-day here on the marketing side.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So let's jump right into it. You are the head of growth and digital for Health-Ade. It has been around for 2012, I think is when it started. And now it's probably the biggest or is the biggest kombucha company in the US. Let's talk about a little bit first about the marketplace as you see it and your brand inside that marketplace. You and I discussed yesterday that there isn't to use a cliche example, there isn't the Kleenex of kombucha yet. Most people know what kombucha is, but they don't necessarily have that kind of brand awareness of one brand that owns that or is the leader in the space. Tell us a little bit more about you, how you think about that, and how Health-Ade is thinking about
Yeah, I think that kombucha for the past couple of years has really been a retail and distribution game. I think that it's been a race to, number of stores to really drive that overall growth and awareness. So, there's two main factors there that you're going to win when playing a sales game right off the bat. It's, number of doors that you're in and quality of product for that repeat rate. But once you hit, that you know, highest percentage of ACV. From there, you really have to switch over to being a marketing company. And that's what we're really seeing in the kombucha space is that, there are a lot of people that understand the category, but there is no real brand loyalty just yet. And the way that we're really thinking that through is orienting ourselves and really becoming the content creators of all things gut health, probiotics, and really, creating content that then speaks more to the brand, what we're doing, what the product really does for you, and really, why you should be drinking it. Because up until this point, it's really just been focused on, you know, rate of sale as well as
that. Yeah.
store distribution.
Yeah, that touches on another thing. I mean, clearly the kombucha market is growing. It's about 2 billion globally, I believe, and it's supposed to reach maybe 10 billion in the next 5 years, 5 or 6 years, which is amazing. But I like what you were touching on because I think you're thinking about your positioning as a brand differently than just owning kombucha because um, that could be a victim or could be a risk of being a fad or a trend or being something that's just category specific. Um, and I'd love you to tell us a little bit more about how you think about the positioning of your product more as a solution versus the category it's in.
I think kombucha at its core is really all about gut health and probiotics, right? So the way with which we actually materialized that product was through kombucha, but
Mhm.
for the long-term goal for Health-Ade, it's really to be, the champions and owners of your gut. Have that be from beverages, that is like our core line kombucha that has our prebiotics or rather probiotics. Have that be our plus line that then adds adaptogens, plus the core line. So you're getting those functional benefits. And then, our Booch Pop right now, which is our prebiotic soda. So I think that when, you're looking at the positioning and maybe let's call it the long-term scale of worrying about being a fad versus being, a long-term play, I think it's really like, what is the problem that you're solving for? And what is the size of the market that you're solving that problem for? And here we really think that almost every single person in the US could use better gut health. And that's really where we're really like focusing ourselves on in the next 2 to 3 years, is just being the owners of all things gut health.
Love that. Part of that, how do you think about your competitors? So clearly there could be kombucha competition, category competition, there could be gut health competition, and then there's just overall CPG and beverage competition. How are you factoring in all those different angles from different companies and brands?
Yeah, I think we touched on this. I think we touched on this yesterday, right? I think it's two goals. Number one, we're fighting to solve the problem. And then number two, we're fighting for that space and fridge, especially now more than ever. That fridge space is so much more sacred than it used to be, just because of the number of, retail visits that are happening in general have kind of scaled down. So when we're looking at our competition, as well as just how we're really scaling the business, I think it's really non-category specific. I think for you to really build out $1 billion brand, you really want to have that almost tunnel vision in a way where you're really just focusing on, your category, your product, quality of product and consumer. I think it's always good to look to the left and the right to see, what other people are doing in the space. But I think carving out the path and really being the first to market with new innovation and, new go-to-market strategy is really the only way to, completely own this market. Nobody's built $1 billion brand by copying other people.
I agree with that. You mentioned store visits going down. A lot of that had to do with the last year and now 3 months that we've been going through as a country and as a world. I've had to ask this in every time I've talked to somebody, but tell us about how COVID and how the lockdown specifically impacted Health-Ade, some of the things that you either had to do to pivot and react to it, or perhaps evolved, or perhaps seized opportunities that the good side to some of the lockdown for some types of companies and some categories.
Yeah. I mean, luckily we were one of the companies that, wasn't affected too much by COVID. We actually ended up having a scaling effect as a result of, people being at home, really starting to focus on their health again after that, first month or two of completely eating like shit and, getting as much takeout as possible. You saw that everybody kind of started to then start to focus back again on health, because we understood that this was going to be, something that was more than just a 3-week, let's call it, stay at home kind of moment. So what we've seen is that really gut health, exercise, wellness, just as an overall, is still really starting to scale, just in a very different way. I think that the way that, consumers who are already our core consumers have, new and different ways of purchasing, have that be through e-com, have that be through Amazon or e-retailers, or even in store and just getting more of it. And then when it comes to, when we were kind of scaling up as a result of COVID with new customer acquisition, that's really where a lot of our advertising came in, and kind of making that connection with the consumer in home before they went to the store and bought online immediately.
Were you driving them to retail, or were you driving them to e-commerce? I think you were Health-Ade. There was the health situation that happened in the last year or so, and then it also that e-commerce, direct to consumer, that's aspect of things that really pushed all of us, and certainly the e-commerce were probably ahead 5 years.
Yeah,
you guys were already there and thinking about digital and thinking about e-commerce. Were you pushing that traffic that you were trying with your advertising? Were you pushing that to e-commerce or to retailers, or to you, it doesn't matter?
we were really focused on, the gut health education piece of it. So it was always pushing, these more contextual, let's call it landing pages or pages on our website, that was much more value-based. And then we happened to then be able to be purchased online on Amazon and retail. I think the real goal for Health-Ade is, driving mass awareness and consideration and then happening to be in the places with which they are willing to buy. Have that be directly from our website, or have that be the next time that they're in, their Whole Foods or Vaughn's at, a much lower price and they just want to try one flavor out. So really the goal there is, yeah, really focusing on awareness and driving traffic to pages that then make you fall in love with the brand, make you want to try the product,
Yeah.
or just get you really amped up on gut health.
That's fascinating. You're in the CPG world, but I know that digital is certainly a big part of your strategy. Um, how are you thinking about merging or marrying or even just making the customer experience equitable between the digital and the retail experience, especially given the fact that you're a CPG beverage company? There's a lot of the sensorial uh, and those type of things that usually have to happen in person. How are you thinking about that on a digital standpoint?
Yeah, I think that as you kind of touched on here, there is no ability to really do sampling anymore. There's no real ability to go in and, chat directly with our consumers. So what we've really focused on is, how are we kind of communicating the core, there are three core pillars that we're really focusing on right now. Number one is really the benefits of the product and, what it kind of does for you net result. So have that be represented through, some landing page, have that be represented through working with nutritionists, UGC, kind of any of those elements. I think number two, as you touched on, building that sensorial experience, the fizz of the bottle as you open it up, how delicious the actual fresh fruit juice actually tastes. Really kind of just doing the most core and primal selling of beverage, right? Which is this product is delicious. And then lastly, the last kind of fit there is then driving experiential marketing, right? How are we then connecting with the consumer in a deeper way that they might have not really thought about, like how gut health then affects mental health, and really talking that through and talking about how gut health is in charge of so many different things outside of just your actual digestion, right? It goes into your mental health, it goes into your skin and hair and nails. There are so many secondary benefits that you could touch on outside of it, and a lot of people are really starting to kind of connect with us on that level.
And is that so? It sounds like you do a lot of content and a lot of creative work. Uh, is that where a lot of your focus is, and is where do you put a lot of your emphasis in terms of your marketing uh, focus and even budget sometimes in terms of making sure that you're both driving awareness, but also driving that engagement and deeper relationship that you just spoke of?
I think it's always a matter of matching where attention is and then making content that then fits within that context. So, when I'm on Facebook, let's call it, or Instagram for the majority of the people, I'm going to be, swiping as quickly as possible. So I'm looking for something that's super engaging that grabs my attention. And then I'm going to be clicking to look for more information. Um, and then that's when I could then layer in that building of that trust and, making you fall in love with the brand. Whereas if it's something like YouTube, I then have that ability to do a little bit more storytelling, a little bit more, connection with the product and, build the content that then makes sense in the context there. I think a lot of brands, especially right now, are trying to go for that scaling effect. So what they're really doing is, copying and pasting their content everywhere. And that's really where they're starting to see, no results or really terrible results of their marketing efforts. But, we really focus on, okay, what is the consumer going through on a day to day? How are they thinking about the world? How does our product then place in their life? And what are we solving for? What time of day do we solve or place in with it? And what are we actually doing for you? And then really building it from there is like, okay, it's now, let's call it 9 o'clock at night. You're on your phone, on your bed scrolling. What are the things that you're thinking about? And how do I then plug in and connect with you on that deeper level?
Fascinating. Have you found that any of that's changed? As I mentioned, you've been around since for 8 years to 9 years. So you've been not just a pioneer in the space, but now you are arguably the 800-pound gorilla. How has being a challenger to an incumbent, has that changed how the company views marketing or innovation, or perhaps not, but has it changed how you've gone about marketing and branding yourself?
I think just in general, competition has been great. And I think that overall, marketing has really evolved from, the old school Coca-Cola, winter mass market, talking to everybody kind of advertising. And I think just in general, it's now become much more, how are we connecting with smaller groups of people and really touching on them? I think that's then just being represented a bunch of different verticals and brands and ethoses, where it's like, how do we now start to do a little bit more contextual marketing, that we're now starting to talk to individual people as opposed to at people.
Tell us, is that a social, mostly a social media function? Like that sounds terrific, but one-to-one communications at scale is always a challenge. How are you doing that?
Yeah, so I think it's really touching on, whom are the demographics that are really working for us right now? Who are the consumers that really try our product right now? And in general, what is it that they really like about the product? And then from there, we're building these audiences that we then look at, let's call it category level. Let's call it just beverage level. Let's call it just more general broad, and really starting to break those out. And like, again, just really thinking in that contextual sense, and then just building a lot of variants and having a lot of fun there with the A/B testing with our media agencies. So when we're looking at, the actual marketing, we'll have a major campaign, but then we really focus on, okay, how are we now building these into mini stories, and who are those mini stories going to connect with best?
Great, great, love that. Um, let's see here. Tell me a little bit more about, let's see, how are you, tell us, there's a lot going on here there, and there's been a lot of macro trends in the industry. So at a macro level around food and beverage specifically, if you were to read the tea leaves, so to speak, are you seeing an evolution or any permanent trends that are happening right now, whether it be from the last year or maybe something more in general?
I think in general, we're really starting to drink non-water beverages for really two occasions. Have that be functional, you're getting some form of supplement, you're getting some form of added health benefit, or have that really be that sensorial flavor oriented bit. So when we're looking at, let's call it more coastal trends right now, a lot of people are really focusing on, 2-in-1, 3-in-1, 4-in-1 functional beverages or packets or sachets or food, where it's like, how is this solving for a group of or problems that I'm having, so that I'm not putting a bunch of powders together and drinking that anymore. It's like, how do we just get one final product that kind of then touches
Yeah.
on a solution we're operating for. And then I think from there, a really interesting, I think, change in consumer behavior is this reduction in overall, let's call it like seasonality trends. Something that we've really seen on our side is that, you'd think that the more fall flavored ginger and lemon and cayenne and, those types of flavors would do typically better when it gets colder. But, what we've actually seen is, it's a little interesting this year, is that a lot of our more tropical flavors has actually kind of stayed being our best sellers throughout the year. And I think, we kind of started to chat with a lot of our consumers to kind of figure out why. And, nobody's going outside. They're not really feeling the cold. They're looking really for that refreshing, fun element to kind of keep them going throughout the week. And that's then being represented in our more sweeter tropical flavors. So that's something that really blew my mind this year.
I know we're sort of looking in the crystal ball. Do you think that something like that is going to, the change in seasonality and the importance of seasonality, do you think that might continue? Do you think seasonality might be, for a lot of categories or for a lot of products, be dead?
I think it's so much more of a function of, how long do we think we're going to continue to be the way that we are with just our general lifestyle? I think that if, a lot of the new ways with which we engage with each other and interact with each other, which are typically more in-house, more digital oriented, I think that there'll be that continuation of that trend. But I think as we start to go back to what was once, the normal life, I think we'll start to see a lot of those more seasonal trends come out as a result of just engaging with the environment and the weather outside.
Terrific. I want to shift back for a minute about maybe a little bit more, slightly more tactical, but certainly nonetheless important. to the audience, and that's around measurement and metrics. Whether it be from your marketing efforts or your branding efforts or even your innovation efforts, digitally especially, how does Health-Ade think about measurement? Not just what are you measuring, but what things are most important to you and your business in terms of how you think about reaching your objectives?
Yeah. So I think what we could do is go from what's the highest level and then how is that then represented in like measurable metrics. I
Yeah.
think that when you're selling a beverage, there's two things. Number one, how many people are picking up the product? Have
Mm.
that be from your marketing, product positioning, have that be from, community, all of the channels that have to do with acquisition and driving new, labels, branding, tone of voice, all of that. And then I think the other measurement of success is then retention, right? This is something that I was chatting about with our director of business development, and I absolutely loved this, which was, there are two main parts to a customer's acquisition. Number one, falling in love with the brand and the product and picking it up. But then number two, what is that actual moment once the liquid touches the lip? And are we
Mm.
providing a really satisfying experience there, as well as then providing that net benefit that people are looking for?
Wow. So, wow, that's awesome. I never really thought about that. How do you measure it? How do you measure how people feel how it actually the sensorial, as you said, part about all of this as it touches your lips? That's how in the world do you measure that?
I mean, it's as simple as how many times are you buying it again after that, right? It's what are the repeat rates of our product? And then the other one is how are we driving, or what is the rate at which we're driving new customer acquisition?
Yeah.
That customer acquisition could be through digital in retail activations. That could be from our marketing with, digital to see what our CPAs and click-through rates are. But really at the core, it's are we driving new customer acquisition as a result of positioning, marketing, solutions oriented kind of positioning, and
Yeah.
then how amazing is the experience once the liquid touches lips, as we say.
That's terrific. Um, one last question, then we are starting to get some questions in as well, so I want to make sure they have enough time.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I asked about the tea leaves at the macro level. Let's talk about the micro level for a minute. What's next? What's going on with Health-Ade, and what's next for you all in terms of uh, new campaigns or new uh, thought leadership or new efforts as well? So where do you see on the horizon for Health-Ade?
This is a joke that we've been kind of saying to everybody internally, but really the goal of Health-Ade for this year, at least on the marketing front, is that you will not be able to not see us somewhere. The idea is that we're really starting to scale up content and really focusing on gut health and really scaling that up in a meaningful way where everybody in the US can kind of understand the actual importance of it. And then however they want to then go about shopping and solving for that solution, have that be kombucha, have that be any other kind of probiotic food. We just happen to kind of offer what I would say the most tasty experience of that.
Delicious gut health. What else?
Exactly.
What else do you need? Um, let's start touching on some of these Q&As to make sure we give them ample time. So here's one question. This space is becoming more and more saturated. How do you separate yourself from the competitors? Do you look at what they are doing ever?
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of kombucha brand. Every couple of days there's a new kombucha brand at this point.
Right.
And I think that's so much more of these companies kind of taking advantage of the fact that, size of market is just scaling and they would be able to kind of grab some of that market. We're really still focused on growing, being the contributors to the actual marketplace growth. So really to do that, we really need to then kind of become essentially the media company of all things gut health. So that's how we're really focusing on differentiation. There are other factors such as like flavors and taste and number of probiotics and all of that. But I think when it comes to connecting with the mass market and mass consumer, it's still really dialing down on gut health and how can we make it not super, finger wagging, how can we make science sexy? That's really the goal for this year.
Do you ever think about gut health is such a broad topic? Do you ever think about uh, well, one thing could be more new products, obviously, but do you
Yeah.
ever think about partnerships or co-branding of anything of any sort?
I think once we really focus on, building the brand that is Health-Ade, I think a lot of people really connect us to our kombucha line, which is amazing. And, that's how we've been built up until this point. I think there's a lot of foundational work that we're going to be doing to really become Health-Ade as opposed to Health-Ade Kombucha.
Uh,
I once we start to really scale that up, then, it starts to make a lot of sense to do a lot of these partnerships and collabs.
that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Where do you see your biggest growth potential? Do you see Health Aid being sold at more grocery stores?
Yeah, I think that, this is kind of a two-in-one. As we start to, scale up the general awareness around gut health and just that, leading that conversation and scaling that up, it then really makes sense for, number one, mass and C-store and a lot of these, non-natural channels. I think we'll see a lot of massive growth, have that be just from actual in-store velocity to new accounts. And then I think the other massive room for growth here for us is really on the e-commerce side of things. I think that just shopper behaviors, changed so much over the past year, and there aren't really a lot of players in the space that have really tackled this kind of problem just because shipping cold chain kombucha is not the most simple thing, but
Yeah,
really being the first in the space to own kombucha delivery to home same day or 2 days from now is something that we're really cracking down on this year.
totally. Speaking of that, the very next question, it's like they read my mind from yesterday. So how do you compare your retail versus e-commerce success so far? And I would even add to that, how are you measuring your success? And then how do you think about how to balance the two of them against, I think you and I talked about cannibalism versus incrementality. I love that. Tell us a little bit more about how you're balancing both of them.
Yeah, I think it's touching on that exact element, cannibalization versus incrementality. I think a lot of brands really worry about, their leakage charts and, where are people kind of shopping from if it's not Costco, where is that going to end up being as a result of opening up new channels? And I think that when we're kind of focusing on, launching new channels, the strategy behind those, is it that, there's obviously going to be a moment of cannibalization because we're actually matching the consumer where they want to be shopping. So that's really a net win for us on that side is that if we're scaling up ecom and a lot of our retail shoppers end up buying on ecom because they enjoy that experience, amazing. And then what we're also testing for is, and this could be through survey, it could be through spins data, any of the other platforms that we're working on. It's what are we then doing to drive new customer acquisition, and is the launch of that channel doing that? And that's what then is going to be directionally scaling the business.
Yeah, totally. Um, I find it fascinating. It's just the cannibalization doesn't necessarily even happen. It's just the pie gets bigger. It's been my experience, and that's just a interesting way to think about it. And
Yeah.
I think that's even more so today. I know, here's one. I know you're not necessarily involved in the product side of things, but does Health Aid have plans for any other products or just kombucha for the near future? So perhaps some of that you don't know or you can't answer. Some of them are under wraps, but maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the latest product that you did uh, just launch. The name's escaping me right now, but the new extension that you just mentioned.
Yeah. So I think just in general, right, to kind of back up this idea of building Health Aid, the brand,
Yeah.
we really want to then hop into a lot of different categories of gut health and how, again, matching consumer behavior. So have that be through beverage, have that be through any other materialization. And, what we found that as an intro for gut health, kombucha might be a little scary just because of, the word of mouth of it being a little acidic or, a little too sour or anything like that they've heard from friends, which personally, I don't believe, but there are a lot of consumers that believe in that. So what we really then focused on was like, okay, what is a gateway to gut health? And we ended up finding out that a lot of people, the sparkling waters, their sodas, that was kind of what we were trying to like grab from is,
Uh-huh.
fighting fridge space as we chatted about. So that then led to the innovation behind our Booch Pop. That is our prebiotic soda alternative. That's really like the, okay, we get it. You might not be, ready, or you're a little apprehensive of just general kombucha. How do we kind of package gut health in a smaller form factor that, you're probably a little bit more used to, and flavors that you can kind of resonate with easier?
Tell, tell me about prebiotic. I'm not quite sure the difference between prebiotic and probiotic.
So prebiotics are the flora, or are the microbes that then help feed your probiotics and
Wow.
feed your microbiome. So think of probiotics as the little microbes that live in your gut, and you're always kind of optimizing to have a better representation of different types of probiotics. And then think of prebiotics as the little, guys that then feed those probiotics as well as those other gut microflora.
That's terrific. So if you, we have about 4 minutes left. If you had a new CPG company, or a new company that was had health benefits, and a health related company similar to yours, what are some of the best advice that you could give them as a marketer?
I think it's focus on your consumer always. And it's super cliche and everybody always says it, but when it comes to, trying to meet end goal, revenue targets, have that be internal conversations. I think leading from a like consumer insights and consumer centric focused lens is what has led to the most, productive conversations in my time while I've been here.
That's great. Let me see. Okay, lastly, anything you'd like to tell us more about Health-Ade yourself, or anything before we wrap things up? We have about 3 minutes left.
I would say the last thing is, we are working on a lot of really amazing content, have that be on our organic social channels and have that be on our website. I see Pearl running into the frame right now. And just be ready to, see and digest a lot of that amazing content, because we're really excited about it.
Well, I know I am. You sent me that link yesterday, and I encourage everybody to go there, because it is light and dare I say bubbly for a website, and it's pretty awesome. So go check out Health-Ade online. You're doing a great job, and thank you, Shray, for all the great work you guys are doing and for the time today.
Yeah, thanks again for the amazing chat, Robert, and we'll hand it off to Pearl on the perfect timing there.
Thanks so much for joining us, Shray and Robert. That was very cool to hear about what you guys are up to nowadays. I'm excited to check out that margarita mix. Can you give me a little more information on that before I try to track that down? Is it going to be at Whole Foods, or is it just on your website right now? Does it have a lot of sugar? As probiotics? I have so many questions.
I love the shout out here, and I could chat all day about our new mixer line. So think about it as that end of day, release and relaxation that you're looking for. This is our way of really tackling, the hard kombucha market, but in a much more, let's call it diverse way. You can just drink this on the rocks. You could just drink this with a little bit of gin, which is delicious. And it's really our core kombucha line. And what we found is that when chatting with a lot of consumers, they ended up making a lot of kombucha cocktails, because it's just easy as pouring one drink and pouring the other. So what we really wanted to do there is then focus on, I see Nick, is then focus on providing an experience that then is a little bit more customized, or a little bit more of a moment. So that's really what we focused here with the new mixers line. They're absolutely delicious, and they are nationally available at Whole Foods and soon to be on our e-commerce channels.
Exciting. All right.
You have a following here, Shray. Fans going here. Well, we love you too. Thanks for the time.
Yes. All right. We'll have to have you back again soon, and we'll have the proper happy hour sponsored by Health-Ade.
All right, let's do it. All right, everyone.
All right. We'll see you back soon.
Bye, you guys.
All right. So next up, we have Andrew Kurian. He's the director of brand marketing at Recess, and his session will be moderated by Sean Horvath, the chief revenue officer at Stream Element.